So now, before you start guessing, like what does she actually know what she's talking about at all? I would like to introduce myself. So currently I work in Booking.com as a product owner in the technology department. And before, my previous experience includes Playtech Estonia, Tallinn office for people from Tartu who are guessing why you probably haven't seen me on parties. And also I used to be a QA team lead in Playtech Estonia. I started my career in project management, being a graphical designer, so it totally sounds like I don't know what I'm doing with my life. But okay, so before, again, we just start, I wrote here a disclaimer. As you know, we had a very nice opening speech today about agile. So my disclaimer basically takes all the responsibility from me. So my understanding of agile, Scrum, Kanban, pretty much differs probably from what you can read on Wiki or what gurus say. But in this talk, I would like to specifically highlight the things that we see in real life. Because theory is great, but let's talk about practice. All right, so again, as you know, and this was the introduction to this talk, as you know, it's very, very clear if you ever had, I don't know, have you ever had a startup? Could you raise your hands if you tried to do something yourself? Yeah, we have quite a few people here, that's cool. So it's very clear when you fail as a startup, right? So you invested your time and your money and you have certain budget and you developed an app and no one downloads it. And then you and your friend think like, okay, yeah, sure. So we open LinkedIn and we search for a job with, for a software developer with, say, some business attitude. That's cool. But when you work in a big company, something is always happening. Like you go to the meetings and the code is being written and then you have this and then you have refactoring and then you have a new project. You're like, okay, fine. But you can be still frustrated. You don't know if you're going the right way or you're going the wrong way. So I would like to highlight 7 issues that I have experienced myself, and I think it's specifically relevant to teams who deal with agile, but not only. Let's hope the next slide works. All right, so I have 7 topics here. First one is being agile equals no long-term planning. Second one, architecture, system design. Nah, we don't need it. Let's decide on the fly. Third one is the price of refactoring. And, by the way, one of my colleagues told me be ready for the rotten tomatoes. I think that's the one. All right, number 4, dealing with a toxic team member. What happens if people just don't want to cooperate? You switch to agile or you've been working there for a while. I also would like to talk, if I have enough time, about never trust a developer, wrong estimations. We just had a extremely useful talk about estimations are not useful, just like 10 minutes ago, right? But if you do estimations, you know that they're never correct. So I would like to highlight that one as well. We also have, we have too many meetings, and that's my favorite subject, actually, to be honest. And also, number 7, it's a trick for PO, how not to be stupid, but ask stupid and needed questions. All right, so we will start with being agile equals no long-term planning. The answer is here. So you work in, for example, Scrum, and in a perfect world, with all the, the butterflies, the unicorns, the epics that have, you have a roadmap, you have attached epics, you have backlog stories, everything is estimated, everything goes right. Not really, right? So we are not living in a perfect world, and we have to adapt, we have to think about the market, and I don't know, the CEO, whoever comes over says like, nah, we do something completely different. And technically, if you want to plan, you have a dedicated person for that, that's product owner. But practically, product owner is often involved into solving some ad hoc issues. For example, making choices like, what do you prefer if it totally breaks, but that might not really happen, it will happen very rarely, or it's a bit broken, but all the time. So if you have this never-ending sprints and cycles and things, you don't really have time to sit and plan. I recently got familiar with something called objectives and key results. It's a nice and good system, and I know that Google practices it. A lot of companies practice it. By the way, I think Google practices a lot of useful things. So The idea is you have your backlog items, whatever, but you also have a few very important objectives for your team, and it starts with the high level, like for the company, for the department, for the team. So you define simply, for example, for a quarter, you define 3-5 objectives, and also you have 3-4 measurable results. So a real life experience. I have an objective to make myself happy in the upcoming month. And I want to define, say, 3 measurable results. That would be buy myself a sports car. I'm just guessing it will make me happy. I don't know about you. Okay, maybe win a DIY furniture contest. And third one, go to Las Vegas, because I work in Playtech, right? Okay, so usually the objective is considered achieved if you did something like 75% of each of your results. So they should be quite interesting to achieve, it should be quite challenging, but at the same time, okay, say I want to make myself happy, so I did all this, but I didn't buy a sports car, but I bought a really nice car, I like it. 75%, yeah. I didn't go on vacations to Las Vegas, yeah. But I was there on a business trip, and I had my weekend there. Good. And the third one, what was it? Like, okay, I didn't win the contest, but I participated. Good as well. Yes, I achieved. But this objective can be completely wrong. I did all that, I'm not happy. So I should set just a new objective. I should update it. I should update the progress. By the way, it can be, I don't know, like I decide I want to be happy, maybe the results, maybe there was something with the results, maybe one of them should be like get married or get divorced. I don't know what's relevant for you. Anyway, so I really would say it sounds good, it works. I had practice with this system and I really can recommend that. It keeps your vision very focused. So anytime you pick a person in the room and say like, what are we working on? What's going on in the company? If you know exactly your 3 objectives, it's very easy to remember. You know, you're delivering this, you're trying to build the best application with this amount of downloads or whatever else. So, next. Okay. Architecture, system design. As well, based on my experience in different companies and talking to my colleagues, quite often we forget that there should be probably an architect. Sometimes you're just supposed to deliver a feature and then you're supposed to deliver the next feature and make the previous feature be, better and then fix the defects, do something. So sprints lead to a lack of system design in some, at least how I have seen it again in practice. And the technical debt basically piles up and it's never addressed. So then at some point you are working in a successful company and we start thinking, okay, how do we scale up? Looking at that, what we just created. So there was a nice joke in the opening talk about like people make sprints for design, for functional design, and et cetera, et cetera. I was thinking how to adapt to this situation with my teams. One of the tips usually, we're working on features, that's all good, that's all nice. But at the same time, as a sprint for myself, I plan the activities that will include workshops, say workshops with products. We analyze, we think like if this is that solution that we're working on, how it's going to affect us in the future. We can't predict anything, well, you can say that. But in the end, having some time, some dedicated time to looking at least what you're doing, it makes sense. It really makes sense. So result of such spike or whatever you call analyzing process should be sit down and code. That's it. So it's not like let's have a meeting and then let's have another follow-up meeting on that and let's talk a bit more. No, we just decided, okay, this is at this stage, this is how our system works. This is how we want to develop it. Sit down and code, great. And I always encourage my teams to have discussions like any solution or any feature I propose, how it will affect the whole system. Like, will we be able to have more users if we make this solution, and etc. So, yeah, and my favorite phrase actually, it's better to spend a week on analyzing than a year on refactoring. I guess some of you are familiar with this issue. Next one. And as a product owner, I am not sure I can tell a lot about it, but I would say something I discovered recently. It's a very good but very old read, and again, I encourage you to Google it. It's by a guy, I think, who's a founder or CEO. Yeah, he was a founder for Stack Overflow. So it's called Things You Should Never Do, Part 1. Anytime I talk to a very experienced senior developer and ask like, okay, we need to develop this. He says like, yeah, but we have to rewrite everything. Why? Because the code, it's messy, something's going on there, we should refactor. So I've seen sprints of refactoring, just pure refactoring. Sometimes the problem with refactoring, we start refactoring for the sake of refactoring. So in this article, which is highly recommended, there are some main principles which says like, yes, it's natural that it's harder to read code than to write it. So when you sit down and look at it and you think like, oh my God, that's normal. And there is absolutely no reason to think that if you have done it 2 years ago, now, of course, you'll learn something. The technology is changing. But it doesn't mean that you will do a better job, 100% sure, than you did before. Like you have this old and messy code, but it's been tested a million times. It's been in use. It's been in production. And we know successful projects like that. So the idea is that you always do it, the changes should always be incremental, and you take the most critical part of your system, and then you refactor, yes, and you always add tests. So apparently, that's all I can say about it. And this article also had a great example of companies who decided to write everything from scratch. Before that, I didn't know that there was a ghost project, for example, Microsoft, called Pyramid. They tried to rewrite Word, I believe. So anyway, there is on the left, you see some of the names, and these are not the products that we use, right? So, and as a product owner, I always ask, when we have these grooming sessions or discussions, I always ask like, okay, you say that we have to rewrite it. What will happen if we don't do it in a day? Guys like, no, nothing. What will happen in a week? Will it still be working? Will we be able to have more users again? Yeah, sure. Like, what will happen if we don't do it in a month? So this question, what will happen if we don't do it, is actually as important as the question, what will happen if we do it, at least in my opinion. So that's a trick, and I share it with you. Okay. This. Yesterday I had a discussion with one of my colleagues here in the conference who asked, like, why do you deal with people issues? You're a product owner. Well, I deal with people issues because I want things to work. So I can give you an example. We had a retrospective in the team. Very interesting. We changed the process. We changed from sprint to a longer sprint or something like that. So we introduced something new. There were a lot of changes, so we had retrospective. I'm sitting with my team, and I'm very interested in what do they think. Okay, let's define the advantages, like the good things that we've done, the things that we would like to improve. Let's have action points from that. Then there is a guy sitting in the room. He just looks at me. I'm like, okay, what do you think? He looks at two pieces of paper. One says, like, I like that we completed the task, the name of the task. Okay, what you didn't like? I didn't like that we didn't complete the task B. Like, what about the team? He's like, I don't care. So I don't care. That's that toxic word that I think we quite often deal with in real life. So when we talk about agile, we think about like this educated, motivated persons who are in your team. Of course, you are very happy. And by the way, you don't need to be here if you don't have any of the problems that I've mentioned. But practically, sometimes people get tired. Sometimes people are disappointed. So what we do, first, I will always try with Scrum Master, for example, to find the reason of the frustration. Because maybe, and quite often, it's for a reason. They have an idea what is wrong. Then also, there is this type of person who always like to criticize everything, right? I find it an interesting experiment, and by the way, since I work in booking, and booking is all about experiments, A/B testing experiments, just ask this person, okay, you don't like the process, fine. Would you like to be Scrum Master? Would you like to step in there and change something? And it actually can work out. So, missing meetings. I think in your teams, you probably also have these team members who happen to miss planning. Stand up, no problem, not at all. The idea is that I got a really nice hint from the person in this audience, by the way. I had a person who was always missing the planning, sorry. So like, what do you do with this person? I started sending these notifications like, okay, we have a planning. I always remind people. I started putting this person as an optional. And the guy's like, why? Why am I optional? Like, you're never there. So if the person doesn't want to be there, yes, okay, but he'll get this feeling, she'll get this feeling that they're missing something. So it might motivate to like say, what's going on? Oh, I missed it, really? So setting a good example also helps. Like your team leader should never, or Scrum Master should never be a diva. So I think it's very important to have a person who says like, yes, we can do it, and then give solutions rather than problems. And extreme measures. I've been in environments where people are not motivated to work, and it takes months to remind them, like, yeah, but you know, you should do this and that, and probably you should cooperate. Sometimes it's nice just to talk and say, like, you know, actually it's work. We're here for work. We get paid for it, yeah? We should do something. It's not a club. It's not like being in a summer camp or something. It helps. It really does. And the last one, and my favorite, is meet the angry stakeholder. So I had a person who was working on a story, well, a ticket. And there were like, we were using Jira, and there were like so many comments under this. Like, I investigated this, but actually I think that's not the reason. So like, okay, is it broken on our side? Can we fix it? Like, and it took, I don't know, weeks. So I took the person who was a stakeholder and who really wanted that fixed, and I put them in the same room. Should I say that in a week everything was fixed and working? Because he saw the person, the user, the stakeholder, the person from operations, whoever, who was really pissed. And you don't have to be that person if you're a product owner or a team leader or a Scrum Master or whoever. Just let them see the real users. So let's go to the next one. Estimations. Actually, I should skip this one, I guess, because of the previous talk. Still, I use estimations. For me, it's important to know how complex the task is, because I don't want a person to sit and work on something for a week, 2 weeks. I know that it should always be broken down to smaller parts, and we should cooperate in a team, and et cetera, et cetera. So we see, I'm looking for excuses to use estimations. But, okay, on a grooming session, you have one person who says like, oh, it's a 3. Like, for them, default is 3, which means like it's done. Well, it depends on how what's your idea of estimations in a team. So we always have that person who's very optimistic, like, it's nothing, right? And you have a person who says like, oh no, it's an infinity. We first have to, getting back to the question about refactoring. We first have to refactor a lot, yes. So I think it's always nice to have a good combination. If you do these grooming sessions, if you discuss estimations, if you practice this, think about, you want to put a pessimist and an optimist in the same room, but you don't want to put 2 people with a completely different opinions on every matter and let them talk. Because these people, by the way, also can talk forever. You will never estimate anything. You know, they'll get into discussions that will end up in politics or whatever, anything which is not related to the result. You want to get a number, you want to know how big the story is, you want to know what are the complications. So, yeah, psychological aspect. I like to review estimations as well. So, when I see that someone is too optimistic or too pessimistic, I always bring up the examples from the past, which means as a product owner I should also be aware and keep it all in my mind. And what also worked for me is printing out how many points or like whatever we accomplish in the last sprint, in the last 10 sprints. So, because when we plan, it's nice to plan. We don't have to do it. The moment you sit down and start writing the code, yeah, that's when it becomes complicated. So we are always too optimistic saying, nah, it's okay. So I trust developers. I do trust developers a lot, but not with estimations. So this is my favorite, my most favorite subject. I was in one of these buildings where many companies, and by the way, many famous companies, rent out places to have their offices. And I was in the elevator, and I had a small talk with the person in the elevator. So you can guess that it wasn't in Estonia, of course, because of the small talk. And the person was like, are you going to the meeting? I'm like, no, man, I'm just getting coffee upstairs. Like, oh, you know, it's my fourth one. I'm like, are you? He's like, yeah, I'm a developer. And then he runs out of the elevator frustrated. Okay. By the way, it wasn't my company. So people want to be motivated. We always talk that you should have an idea of a bigger picture and et cetera, et cetera. And one of the things that we propose as a solution is let's have a meeting. So meeting is the answer to everything. I don't think it's a good idea. I totally don't think it's a good idea. Think about, again, Scrum. You can have planning, you can have grooming, you can have team planning, you can have pre-demo, you can have demo, you can have retrospective, you can have meetings on the architectural matters, you can have a meeting with product owner, you can have an update from the business, you can have a team update, you can have a whatever. So my personal rule, I have a lot of meetings, yes, it's true. I don't have more than 2 meetings a day. I think there is something very wrong if there are more than 2. And there should be, say, not more than 2 meetings a week for my team. I try to combine things because I know that developers quite often find that useless. So how important it is to have a meeting. When you want to call people, I think everyone has seen this picture on the internet, right? Like which says like, feeling lonely, no one likes you. Have a meeting, you can show charts, you can have donuts, you can impress your colleagues. So are you sure it's not the case? Yeah, it's the first question. So how often should you arrange it? So if it's reoccurring meeting, for example, it's an update for your team. Maybe if you see everyone's checking their phones, you know, like, and it was Angry Birds, then I think it was this Benji Banana thing. So maybe you don't need that meeting. Maybe you just need it once a month and make it short, 15 minutes, so they can download their apps. So, and whom to invite. There is also a tendency to invite everyone, just in case. We call the architect just in case. We call the product owner just in case. Again, if you see a person on the meeting with their phone, don't invite them next time. Send them a short update. Send them 2 lines in the email, like, you know. If you see that even if your manager is not interested in the subject, then just give them an option A and B in a short email, come over to their desk, or I don't know, send it by Slack, whatever. Just say, okay, we decided we can do this or that. It really becomes a horrible situation when you sit on the meeting when no one is interested, really. And you're there like, what are we doing here? I had an idea for the app that would actually calculate the cost of the meeting. So say your estimation is 30 minutes. When these 30 minutes are over, you basically take the amount of people in the room, take the average salary, and you calculate how much each hour costs, so like it goes up. And it's better if you have it on the screen, because then people will start thinking like, actually, yes, if we lost half a day and 10 of us, it's like a week, right? So, favorite one, indeed. Okay, what do we have else? And that's, I think actually I'm very, very fast. As you know, I don't like meetings and I don't like presentations. We're almost done. Okay, how not to be stupid but ask stupid questions. I was in a situation when I had to join a new team, and they were working with something related to finance, accounting, which, well, I did accounting like 10 years ago. So I was sitting in this meeting, and they're always using these weird words, like SAP something, something, something. And your first feeling as a product owner, I should know all the answers. And you sit there and you make a smart face. You're like, yeah, estimation, nice. But if you ask sorry, what exactly does it do? So it takes this money and it sends it there, and then the guy gets it. Oh no, the guy won't get it. Why? In that case, it actually solved one of the problems that we were trying to solve for quite a while. So asking the stupid questions, like we all know about this rubber duck programming, that the rubber duck should understand your solution. Like your product owner basically can be your rubber duck as well. If it's not good to explain to your product owner, and I don't know, maybe all of you have great product owners with very high technical and business level of knowledge, whatever, you're very lucky then. But yeah, if a product owner doesn't understand your solution, let's get back to the basics. Let's think maybe there's something wrong. Okay, another phrase that I heard quite many times was called product owner should know. And say someone comes over to a developer, okay, how do we do this? How do we do that? Okay, product owner should know. Well, technically, product owner should know, but if product owner doesn't know, they don't have to pretend that, yes, they do. And it's, again, 70% of issues that people are afraid to admit that they don't understand. And this is how we end up with very complicated solutions as well. Okay. And why I put this quote from Sir Arthur Conan Doyle about Sherlock Holmes? His ignorance was as remarkable as his knowledge. I think it could describe some people that I met in technology, right? So the idea is that, as you remember, Sherlock Holmes had this theory that the human brain is like an attic, and you shouldn't put there as many, like all the items that you can, because you're supposed to keep it very clean. And that's why he didn't know about the solar system, for example. So I've met product owners on different occasions who were thinking that, yeah, Sherlock Holmes. I'm like Sherlock Holmes. Like, oh no, I don't want to know it. It's too technical. Oh, I don't want to know it. It's too business. I think the idea is to learn and to always be open. So there is not too much to know the technical side of the product that you're working on. It's not too much to know about the business. And I think as a product owner as well, I always try to be that balanced person. Maybe I fail, by the way. My current team is not here, so. So if a person refuses to learn and to know more about it, I wouldn't trust them to answer a question like, we are agile, now what? So? Questions? Thank you.